One.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Objective. And I'm glad to be here on multiple levels. As you may know, I'm living with COVID-19. And I'm feeling a little bit better each day. Thank you for your concern. Please consider supporting us in the super chat if you have something to add or want to show your support for a literal show with COVID-19 in it, as well as consider becoming an ARC UK member. It's a great way, a lot of podcasts say, hey, join our Patreon, throw us your money and get nothing in return. We say become a member, get exclusive content, as well as be part of growing this thing in order to spread a positive message. And speaking of messages, positive or otherwise, it's been reported that an actress whose name was Gina Carano got fired. No, not exactly fired. It's not even clear if she was fired. I think they might not be renewing her contract or they might not be rehiring her for this reoccurring role. It's unclear to me, but you know how these things go. As soon as it fits a narrative, you're going to see people going, oh, she was fired. They pulled the food out of her baby's mouth while the baby was eating. Like, that's how people will frame it when it suits their narrative. So what she had posted on Instagram is something to the effect that being conservative in America today is like being Jewish in Nazi Germany under German rule. And then she got, let's say not rehired by Disney and her agency dropped her, which, listen, luckily we've got an actor here today to tell me if I'm wrong. But my understanding of the world of acting is that basically the agency doesn't want any trouble. Just don't do anything to embarrass them whatsoever. But we'll get to him in just a second. Let me give you my take on this whole thing. It's clearly a double standard in the world. People can call Trump a Nazi all day, and there's no consequence professionally, usually, often, I'll say. There's not always a consequence. And in this case, somebody said something alluding that conservatives are akin to prisoners in the Nazi regime. And obviously there are consequences. So we can talk a lot about the double standard, but what sort of strikes me about this is the way that the right, the way that conservatives and many other free market people, some objectivists, obviously just people of anyone who's not on the left are turning this into like, oh, they proved her point. That's got to be the top tweeted comment about this whole thing. Oh, they proved her point. They proved that conservatives are treated like Jews under the Third Reich. And I think we need to relax. There's a lot of podcasts where you can go to get that kind of narrative. Like, oh, yeah, they proved her point. She is like a Jew living under Hitler. But there's very few podcasts that'll tell you to relax, take a deep breath, and calm down with that type of language. I was actually, this might start like a Daily Objective civil war. I was watching yesterday's episode, and I heard Nikos Sotirakopoulos bring up the time we disagreed about comparing these lockdowns, in the ones in Europe, to East Germany, to the time I took issue with the title, "We are all East Germans now." I was surprised back then that anyone would want to use that title. I was surprised that Razi, the Lord Emperor behind the scenes, would not agree entirely with me that was an outrageous title. And but I think rationalism, it runs in the family. When you go to a doctor and he asks you what's your background, what's your ethnicity, and if you say like I'm Scottish, he'll say like, oh, okay, let's check you for lupus or whatever the Scottish are more likely to have in their family. And if you're an Israeli, I think the doctor says, oh, rationalism, be careful for the rationalism. I'm joking, everybody. This is a dramatic restylization of reality you're getting here. But yeah, I saw Nikos brought that up yesterday on the show. And now, again, we're seeing comparisons to Nazi Germany. You guys understand? Do all of you people out there understand what totalitarianism actually is? But putting aside the East Germany comparison, the Nazi comparison, is that what happened to the Jews? What the Disney stars were dropped from their agency? That's what that was the Jewish experience in Auschwitz? Good Lord Almighty, folks. Speaking of Lord Almighty and his frenemy, Lucifer. Let's bring on a guy who, good luck trying to cancel this guy. People want to see him, and that's the trick. If you're too endearing and talented, no one will ever want to drop you from their agency, and no production company will ever dream of letting you go. Please welcome Mark Pellegrino.
Well, thank you for that. I don't trust the Times, though. I think the Times are too irrational to think that you can escape being sullied by this insanity. I mean, just to play devil's advocate, it's not like the Jews in Nazi Germany were all at once thrown into concentration camps and all at once exterminated. There was at first a ramping up. There was a ramping up of rhetoric. There was a ramping up of ostracization and social and it's social distancing, for lack of a better word. And there was a gradual strangling of their business reputations, taking over their businesses, essentially pushing them out of society before they were herded into ghettos and then camps later on for the final extermination. And when you hear leftists caught on tape, as the Project Veritas exposure of that NPR lawyer shows, he's not necessarily unusual, since you hear it from pundits on the left all the time, that people need to be re-educated on the right, re-educated. Well, the concept of re-education carries with it a pretty deep root in communist re-education camps and abuse of authoritarian regimes, and that's sort of an inescapable comparison. So, to play devil's advocate, I think that the language on both sides is so filled with hyperbole and exaggeration because they're each trying to just wound each other, and that's all they want to do. But that hyperbole is grounded in a grain of truth on each side. The left is, it talks about an insurrection from a bunch of foolish rioters in costumes, but they're not completely untruthful in their observation that was what was happening. And the right's observation about being canceled and ostracized from culture, and even the potential projection of further abuses down the line that resemble authoritarian regimes, has its roots in many of the language, in a lot of the language of people who are leading the charges on the left. So we're in a hysterical time. People are using hyperbolic language with each other, but each side is touching the truth to some degree with respect to the other. So is she right? No, she's not. She's not right. But there's enough truth there for people to say, see, these are the times we live in.
There's enough truth for them to say that. And yes, there is a touch of truth in what both sides are saying, but it's that part that's not true that I'm concerned about, and the way it's being ran with by very influential speakers and thinkers. I mean, I saw Mark Levin, who I always pegged for like a very principled thinker in his own context. Obviously, as a conservative, he's gonna have a big place for God, which of course is like a drop of poison in the stew. You're going to end up basically with a poisonous stew. But he would go on these rants on his radio show about how like a Supreme Court decision in 1940 something like violated property rights in a certain case, and we're still paying the price for that to this day. And he took like property rights so seriously. And flash forward to a month ago or a couple months ago, when Twitter banned Donald Trump, Mark Levin tweeted out, "I am leaving Twitter in protest of this fascism," he said. He used the word fascism. This is a constitutional scholar. Of all people, he should know that word has meaning. And I tweeted back at him saying there's nothing less fascist than a private citizen telling the president to get off his property. And again, I understand people can say there's a double standard, the way that liberals are treated versus conservatives, or leftists versus people on the right. I get that. There's a lot to say there. But this type of hyperbole, I mean, it is, at a certain point, it's not just being dramatic. Like when I use hyperbole, I think it should be implied I'm being tongue in cheek. But these people, they're like me. but without the tongue-in-cheek. They are like everything I've satirized and spoofed. They are actually doing this unironically. And these are leading thinkers, leading intellectuals and pundits and political analysts and all these people. Like when something like this happens, when Gina is banned by Disney, canceled by Disney or something, or fired from, or dropped from her agency, they're actually running with this narrative in a way that really excites the passions of the masses. It really validates the types of people who we saw storming the Capitol. It contributes to this vision where, yes, the private sector and the government, Democrats and rhinos, all these people, they're like in cahoots to suppress the point of view that is not on board with the left. And we're going to see a lot more unrest and all types of problems ahead if we don't start to think clearly and to be more careful with our words.
Well, good luck with that, because the camps are solidifying right now, and they're really into otherism, and they're scapegoating each other, and that's how they get power. So I don't see that ramping down anytime soon. I don't see any, besides objectivism, I see no intellectual alternative for either side to turn to. I mean, the thinking people on the left, the more or less liberals who are leaving the anti-intellectual left, are turning to the right for solace. I mean, look at Dave Rubin, a graduate of the Young Turks, who's a gay married man who's turning to the right, not to objectivism, but to the right, and embracing some of their fundamental principles, and in a sense being absorbed into that tribe. Well, no, there needs to be a third alternative. We have to be the third rail, because neither side is telling us the complete truth and using grains of truth to excite their bases to violence. Yeah, there's no good way that a conversation like this is a conversation stopper. It's not a conversation starter. This scapegoating. So other than offering our point of view, which is so unique and different from what both sides are presenting, I'm not sure exactly what to do about this, because the other sides have the numbers and the megaphones.
Mm-hmm. It's becoming increasingly clear to me that like definitions in essentials is sort of a big part of the battle. I mean, epistemology, like clear thinking, critical thinking, that is the battle, along with ethics, of course. When people start to look at the world in terms of what will best enable me to live at peace in pursuit of my values, we're going to see a much different, I think, a much different sort of widespread attitude in the world in moments like this. The way people are reacting so passionately to this type of thing are these people planning to work for Disney, and they're worried that they're going to get fired for a tweet? My impression of the world of acting and Hollywood is, if like you just stay away from controversy, because like these agencies, like they don't have time for any bullshit at all. So I would tell actors, just stay off of social media altogether. So it's like,
well, I think the problem is that there's no objective standard for what defines that controversy, and the standard of today is not the standard of tomorrow, and people are being convicted ex post facto for things that they've done 10, 12 years ago, which were completely normalized then. And and to this new religion that's holding people accountable for everything they say, and these shifting sands of what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate, there's also no atonement to be made other than your complete destruction. This is not cool. I mean, I think people are responding intuitively to a real unfairness out there. It'd be one thing if there was something you could, as a human being, not only as an actor and entertainer, but as a human being, you could say, okay, I know this topic is controversial, or I shouldn't raise this topic because it's going to start a firestorm. But you never know. I was reading in a book called Panics and Persecutions, of the digital age. Some people who were canceled and wrote articles about it. One woman was attacked. She was a knitter, and she had she's part of the knitting community and was a knitting wool distributor. She wrote a blog about going to India and how excited she was to go to India. It was a lifelong dream. And she talked about how in the past, it seemed as remote a possibility as going to Mars. Well, that was the end of her life, because people actually made it seem that she was comparing India to an alien planet. And so she was castigated publicly. People who didn't even know this woman jumped on that singular phrase, completely out of even if you take it out of context, you can't lose the context. It's not like she was insulting anybody. She was talking about a dream and the impossibility of realizing it, and how remote it seemed to realize. Any human being who understands the English language would have understood what that was, but she was destroyed for it. So we're talking about, people can take individual words and sentences out of context and ruin your life.
When you say ruined her life, what were the consequences to that?
There was a pile-on and a massive campaign to get her taken out of the distribution loop, and she was disinvited to various conventions and events, and her friends started abandoning her, deserting her, not because she said anything wrong, but because the perception was that she had said something wrong. Now this is like, there's even a word for what's happening out there in the social media universe. It's called Kafka trapping. You literally are being accused of crimes you have no idea you've committed. And you're on trial you don't know why, and there's really nothing you can do about it. Nothing. You're going down. Now that's a different world, I think, than anything we've experienced in America in the past. This is a strange world we live in, and I think parts of the right and even parts of the left who have moved over to the right, trying to find an intellectual home, are recognizing intuitively that this is just not right, and they don't know what to do about it. Who does?
Well, so I agree about not only, I mentioned there's double standards where some people are held, are punished for their unintentional offense and others not. But in additional, there's this ever-changing standard that people can't predict, and that is a miserable way to try and live. But a couple points. First, that's not what happened with this Disney star here. She didn't just say casually, "Oh man, going to India seems like going to Mars," and have her career revoked. She said something very provocative. And again, I know people are going to bring up the double standard that other people bring up Nazi Germany with no consequences. But nonetheless, it is a provocative thing to say. And this is a Disney star. This is Disney. This is not, HBO After Dark with, nude breastises. This is Disney. The other HBO After Dark. I just invent networks. Anyway, that's point number one, that's not what took place here. And what was my other point? I guess I forgot the other point. Oh yeah, just the way these things are run with, the way these things are turned into the conflation of political power with economic power, the way that people like Ted Cruz, that dishonest SOB, like he just is continuously, him and Charlie Kirk and Dave Rubin and all these people are just continuously turning this into like them versus us. Like they want us to not be able to speak and live. But this is the Hegelian conflict theory. This is the narrative that the left does operate by, and the right is adopting it. So it is us versus them. The left does look at the world as us versus them, as oppression structures and dominant structures, and that's the way they live. That's the prism through which they see everything. And the right is doing the same exact thing. I say get off that merry-go-round and come to objectivism. Yeah, and that starts with kind of being like kind of individually looking at the world and just think about like, what do you want? What are you passionate about? What do you enjoy? And what do you hope to get out of life? What do you wish to do as a career? Just make a list of the things you want and just start pursuing those things. That, you know, it's such a breath of fresh air whenever I talk to people that are just not really tuned into this whole culture war and politics and all of that, and we connect on, let's say, shared interest in certain music, or we're both fans of this and that, we both have traveled to a certain place, and it just has nothing to do with all of this stuff. It's just so refreshing, and there's a lot of people just like that. And I think taking a break from this whole culture war would benefit most people. Yeah, I mean, look at Objectivism and notice how much it emphasizes the meaning of words and the definition with essentials. You can see how quickly power just becomes this moldable concept. Power. So if Disney drops someone from Star Wars, that's the same as the government, treating citizens like cattle. And how quickly will that become a self-fulfilling prophecy? The more we conflate political power with economic power, the more Republicans drag big tech executives into Congress and question them and treat them as if they broke any laws. The
more these big tech executives become a part of the administration, embedded in administrations, and we can't deny that either.
Right. The more we see that marriage grow and grow stronger, the more we will end up seeing a world where your rights as an individual are left up to the subjective opinion of a bureaucrat or of legislators to mess around with. So the more we treat rights, like the more we conflate negative rights with so-called positive rights, the more we treat rights as though they are a favor, or as the more we conflate rights with entitlements, the more we're going to see a world come about where your rights are in fact up to the whim of your neighbor or of your ruling class, your ruler, whatever it is. And that is not a world I want to live in. And there used to be a time where conservatives at least were trying to say slow down, and they were trying to point out this distinction between political power and economic power. And conservatives used to tell leftists, these corporations are not the government. And they were never perfect at it. And conservatives definitely were often always full of it. But compared to today, it's like I miss the days when there were people on the right telling the left to mellow out and that corporations are not ruling over us. They used to talk about the beauty of a successful corporation. You know, a man with a dream comes to America and pursues his dream and is able to bring about this amazing success story. Today, corporations are the enemy, according to the right. Big tech is out to get us. And who actually has been deleted from big tech? It's a very small list of people, and they've all got a very provocative method. So I'm very concerned about what the right is turning into, because there's going to be nobody facing against the left. But like you said, Mark, people ought to explore this other option, this sort of other dimension where it all can sort of make a lot more sense.
Yeah, I think objectivism is the antidote to the insanity we're seeing on both sides.
That's right. Coming up tomorrow on the Daily Objective, Jonathan and Nikos discuss the movie Wall Street. Well, that's nice. If you haven't seen the movie Wall Street, you got about 12 hours to go watch it now. All right. Thank you for the super chats, LMH, and of course, Dagny, T1957 for your super chat as well. Always good to have Dagny Taggart stop by. Thank you, everybody, watching this live and watching this late. Please share the video, share the audio. Consider joining the ARC UK membership program. It is not a re-education program like I'm told the left is rolling out, but we will help you re-educate yourself. How's that? And until next time, thank you and goodbye.